My name's Jorb. I love gear. You just heard one of the best reverb sounds to ever come out of my little, not quite a studio space, courtesy of Empress Effects and the aptly named Reverb. Yes, that is all they named their top-of-the-line reverb pedal, the Reverb, and we'll address that later. But on my Instagram, which you should follow at Jorb Loves Gear, I described my first impressions as exquisite, and I really do think that's the right word. It's indisputably premium, and it just sounds really, really good. And I struggle sometimes with the right words to describe a reverb, because I feel like saying rich implies something else, and I feel like saying full implies something else. And so I always end up falling back on just good. So I'll try and avoid that while we go through some of these sounds. But I had seen this covered in a video or two before. I must have seen the Knobs video from a few years back, and I always watch Ricky Tinez, so I know I must have seen him talk about it. But clearly I didn't pay enough attention because there's so much functionality in here I didn't even know about. Even some things that make it really, really perfect for using with synthesizers. And first off, I didn't realize there were multiple modes behind each of these LED labels on the panel. Just super base level. I didn't know that this could do nearly as much as it could. But I also didn't know there'd been an update to add a looper, and I didn't have any idea it supported full MIDI CC control, and I didn't realize that it had 0 to 5 volts control voltage compatibility either. All of those are little things that make me think, wow, this could be perfect for synthesizers. This could be perfect for me in my use case. So I'm going to give you a quick look at the Reverb's range of control, demonstrate some of its most impressive modes, at least impressive to me, and give you some examples of setups with synthesizers that take full advantage of its advanced connectivity. I won't do every mode because there really are so many. This is mid-editing Jorb. I won't do every mode in this video, but after doing a few, I've decided I really want to do a video where I just go through all of them. And if they need more or less time, because they need more or less time, that's what they're going to get. So that won't be this video, but I am 100% going to do another where I just step through all the modes and explain whatever is to explain about all of them, because they really do deserve it. Okay, back to that timeline. And they all, to my ears, do sound good. There are a few I want to highlight, but this won't be just going through all the presets. I don't think that's valuable. And it will include a lot of watching me work the pedal and do some technical things hands-on with it with a very nice camera angle, because those things are important to me, and those are the videos I find myself getting the most out of. If I'm trying to make a purchase decision, seeing the way it actually needs to be interacted with, seeing the way people actually sit down and use it is very, very helpful to me. So I'm going to do my best and show that to you guys. And through those demonstrations and maybe some of my mediocre playing, I hope to convince you that the Empress Reverb is the best reverb pedal for synthesizers. Full stop. So, if you're subscribed, thanks for coming back. If you are not, I hope you consider subscribing. And you know what I never ask you guys to do? I never ask anybody to like the video. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know if you guys do or don't like the videos. I know my ratios are good. But let's see if asking you guys changes the numbers. Smash that MF like button. At any rate, all those things help me grow. And if you like the video, decide you want to support me even more, I have a Patreon you can learn about in the description. Okay, no more shilling. How did I get this pedal? Empress reached out to me, actually, as recommended by somebody who works there and watches my videos. So thank you, John, for that. But they asked if I wanted to take a look at anything. I said the Reverb could be a good fit for me and a good fit for what I've been working on, and this showed up about a week later. So yes, this is here because Empress wants me to take a look at it, but they aren't paying me anything, and they don't have any input as far as what I actually get to say or talk about in here. So there we go. There's all your exposition. Everything else is going to be hands-on with the pedal. And I'll use a few different keyboards over this, but right now we're on the JX8P. Wonderful, which I'm playing in no small part because Zach Marr from the Alamo Music Lab has been talking about these lately, and now they're on my mind. And they sound really, really good. Plus, just all the colors thematically. It felt like a good fit for the Reverb, doesn't it? Okay, we're going to start with something a little more straightforward. So this is the room setting. And I also have this handy-dandy reference chart with me, and I will be looking back at it a lot of the time because there's a lot of things that I wouldn't remember. For example, most of these parameters are the same for every single sound. These top three are the same, your decay, your mix, and your full output level. These two are an EQ, low cut to the left, low boost to the right. Same thing for your high end. Those 5 knobs, with a few exceptions, are the same in every single mode. And there are two, thing 1 and thing 2, how fun. There are two knobs, thing 1 and thing 2, that change for every single mode. And then this handy dandy reference chart, which might be just out of focus. And I will not adjust it because this is a crummy old lens that doesn't keep its focus where it's at. So I'm not gonna disturb it. I have this handy dandy reference manual to tell me. So I see room on a blue LED, which is the only room mode, is called LA Studio, a realistic room with dense early reflections. And my two thing parameters are pre-delay time and the level of our early reflections. So I'm going to stick them at noon. This is something the manual tells us to do. Every sound is designed to sound good at noon and tweak from there to taste. So this is everything at noon. Actually, I'll start with my dry. I feel like Andy. First, my clean tone. Wonderful. Now with the room reverb, everything at noon. I like that. How about a little bit more mix? A little bit more decay. That just sounds good, doesn't it? So decay and mix are self-explanatory. Left is full dry. Right is full wet. And let's turn up our pre-delay. You guys notice that difference between when I hit the key, here you can hear it. And pre-delay way down. So with that pre-delay is how long before the first reflection starts to come back. And this pre-delay level, or excuse me, I think it's called early reflections level. Is the volume of those first couple reflections. Turn that way down. So that first sort of blast back gets increased in volume with that second control. I skipped ahead of the EQ, so let's do a low cut. And low boost. Ooh. It's almost like it's breaking up a little bit. I wonder if the whatever amplifier chips in here are breaking up. Let's a high cut. Let's a high boost. Little less output now. Man, that really sounds good. Great. This is a very complimentary sound, and it does have chorus on. Actually, what is the control for chorus? Is that 64? It is 64. I have turned off the chorus just so that we don't mistake any of the sauce we hear as coming from the pedal. That sounds quite good. Still, doesn't it? Let's put the aftertouch to a vibrato. Okay, like I said earlier, that was room. Each of these other panel labels and panel LEDs might have a few modes. You see as I click through modulation, we get a bunch of different colors. Each of those has its own set of parameters on thing 1 and thing 2. And there might be some commonality between each of the modes, but they are all totally different. So back to my handy-dandy manual here. I think the first one, blue, is just modulation. Sounds good. And our thing controls here are rate and depth of our modulation. So let's turn depth all the way up. Let's go full wet with a little less decay. You hear that? It's almost like a flanger. Turn our rate down. Less depth. Higher rate. Some dry signal back. Some more decay. Less rate still. I absolutely love this. More decay still. Slight boost in level. Up on both of our EQ. Again, like I said, I find it hard to find the right words to describe reverb. Because you can be very literal. I hear the modulation. I hear the decay. But to describe the quality of reverb is something I really, really struggle with. Because all I want to say, because all I hear is, that sounds really good. It sounds exquisite. Okay, I'm going to try and stop myself from falling down that rabbit hole again. Low depth, a little bit higher rate. That still seems a little busy. But all these sounds I would very happily use. I love that. Okay, anyway, that was a complete detour, just so you guys know. The outline did not include any of that. But as we move through these modulation parameters, we get a little more literal with the effects that are that modulation, that modulating. The first one sounded like a chorus through into a flanger, right? But they say green is just a chorused reverb, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go full wet. I'm going to turn down our decay, and our thing controls are the same, rate and depth. So low rate, high depth. Wonderful. We're going to just skip quickly on to the next one because I'll get lost in all of these sounds. This is explicitly flanging with a really high depth. That range of controls is not out of control. I, as a tweaker, maybe would like it to get like unreasonably deep, unreasonably fast. And even at max settings, I think I would consider those to be reasonable. That's such a minor complaint, but I wish the controls had a wide enough range for me to make it sound bad. Isn't a very reasonable thing to request, is it? Because you're going to want to live in the middle 99% of the time. Less depth, more dry signal. Also sounds wonderful, can serve a lot of the same purpose, as the chorused one. This is yellow, it's a tremolo reverb. I have a soft spot for tremolo and it doesn't come up enough, but our thing knobs are the same thing. Rate and depth. Let's go full wet. That's great. And this sort of starts the trend, or our evidence of the trend, that a lot of the things this can do cover the jobs of at least two pedals. If you wanted to get this sound with a lot of other things, it would be separately a tremolo and a reverb, as is true for the other modulation controls here. And having them grouped up together and able to be saved as a preset, or recalled, or included just in one smaller footprint, that is a really, really good. That already gets you closer to the value statement of this, and this is $449, which is what I see on Perfect Circuit right now, and there's a link below. That's an affiliate link. If you want to buy one of these, I'll point you there, and I'll link you to Empress's site directly if there's dealers that are better for you, your country, or whatever. But with the affiliate link to Perfect Circuit, that cookie stays in your browser, and if you make a purchase, doesn't have to be this, can be anything, I can get a kickback within some certain amount of time. Snuck that one in there. I told you the shilling was done. I lied. Okay. Anyway, like I said, if you had 2 boutique pedals, we'll call them $150 each, you're closer to the value statement of this. And I don't think it's unreasonable to say somebody would have a $150 reverb, and a $150 tremolo. And if you consider this as doing that and more, even in a single moment, and if you consider each of these as separate, you have a chorus, you have a flanger, you have a tremolo. Already I can justify, and I'm sure many people can understand, really, the price now. Because of the flexibility in here, the price is a lot easier to swallow. And if you divide it into chunks, like, oh, this can take over the job of 3 of the pedals I already had, there's your entire budget right there. Anyway, that was a little tangent as well. But I mentioned modes that let you forego an additional pedals. Let's move on to the delay and reverb modes to really show you that that's true in a lot of these. So the first one is a single tap delay, and our 2 thing controls are delay time and delay feedback. I need something that's got a sharper attack. Wow. Less highs, less lows, more dry. Continuing in that direction. More time, less feedback. Let's get our EQ back to center. Less highs, more lows. A little more feedback, a little more time. And our mix here controls our reverb and our delay. Wonderful. I'm going to skip over this green one. We're going to move right down to red. Red is filtered feedback delay. And we have delay time and delay feedback, but our high and low knobs now filter the delay feedback, just the delay feedback. So I want it to sound a little darker, so the high end's chopped off. Full wet doesn't quite work on this. Less feedback, more time. How about another sound again? Less time, more feedback, more high end. Lovely. And again, I'm doing my best not to just play these sounds and let that be it. But I think they really speak for themselves. They just sound super good. Anyway, I skipped over the green one, so we could go back to it. So now our controls are blend of delay versus reverb and delay feedback. Whoops. Let's go all the way one. I believe that's just our delay. But if I want to change the time now, how do I do that? Well, we tap in our tempo on the select switch. Awesome. And I show you all three of those kind of quickly to show you that it isn't just, oh, I have a delay and a reverb. It's a delay and a reverb where you can control different things in different ways. It's not just three versions of the same thing. Because the first thing I would want to do is that filtered feedback delay. I want to be able to chop that high end off like an analog delay, like a BBD delay would. And that blendable delay, well, maybe they don't want as much reverb in the sound. You have controls for that. Oh, well, if they don't have time, let's use this select switch. So in combination with being flexible, there's an exhaustive list, not just of these modes, but of many in what might be the best way for somebody to control this. And I really, really like that. In this tap tempo, we can do the tap tempo on the other modes. Wonderful. And if I go back up to modulation, let's do the tremolo. It's really easy to hear. And that sounds cool. But that tap tempo can work on modes with like a cycling LFO like that as well. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, I showed you that now. Alrighty, we're now on voices, which I really, really like, but I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to turn off the chorus, just so that any of the modulation you hear is coming from the reverb. And this is the green ghost mode called Casper. I just love that. I really do. And our two controls are modulation and diffusion. So I had them pretty high up. Let's turn them. Less decay. More decay. Turn up that modulation. You can hear it shifting the time of something, a delay or a reverb buffer. I hear a lower rumble than I did at those early modulation settings. Literally me playing lower notes. Turn up our diffusion, which I think is a stereo bleed. I honestly don't know for sure. This is one of my favorite modes, paired with one of my favorite sounds on here. I might even be cheating. Excuse me. Let's go back to low strings. Even better. Just sounds so, so good. Anyway, the whole segue, there's other things you can do with that select control, with that select switch. If I hold it down, it'll just keep whatever's in that reverb buffer. And it will persist, and it will persist. And I can still affect it with these controls. Great. Another thing we can do with our select switch. Very cool. An infinite hold for you ambient folk wherever you're at. I know you're watching this. There you go. That's probably what you were wondering. I need to stop playing so much for each of these sounds. But they've all been really, really good, and that could be the whole video, seriously. It's just going through amazing sounds, but I need to change pace a bit, so I'm going to try and focus specifically on features, okay? The sounds are very good. You guys got it. But they're all pretty different, and these different control knobs make it so that swapping between, without the manual especially, might get to be a little confusing if you really liked one of the delay plus reverbs, for example, and you couldn't remember which color was which. I can understand that being a problem, or you weren't sure if the ghost you liked was blue or green. Well, there is a way around that, of course. There is a preset system. So you see, if I hit scroll, I'll click through these flashing LEDs in order. And if I hit them both at the same time, we will step backwards. So this is preset 5, 4, 3, 2. And if I hit select while that's flashing, that will become solid to let me know I'm on preset 2. Whatever I had set there is what we're on now. So now we're on preset 3. One more, play it again. So you can save a mode and its collection of settings as a preset, which is wonderful. And to save one, and if you go all the way to the end, these flashing white LEDs, and there's an advanced setting to change how many presets you have. I have mine just to 5 for simplicity's sake, but I go to 5, and they're all flashing white. I select it. We're in manual again, which is the ghost we were talking about. And if I want to save that, let's put it on 2. I scroll to the second, hold save, press scroll. Now, let's select 3. We're on plate. If I scroll, go back to 2, select it, we're on the ghost that I just saved. So that is not hard at all. I only have this set up to do 5, just so I can scroll through it with my hand while I'm here, instead of trying to hammer these left and right. You can do way more. I'm not actually sure what the maximum is. but I will put it on screen right now. But that is the scrolling preset system, linear list, but there's also one that works based on banks, and each of these LEDs would represent a bank, and then each of these stomp switches then is an individual preset. So for every one of these LEDs, you have 3, so maybe you have 3 reverb sounds in a specific song, and so your bank 1 is those 3 songs. But I'm not going to show that to you, just so I don't have to reconfigure anything or make this video any longer than it already is. That is a wonderful feature, but I think presets are really pretty well understood by us synth folk, right? So I'm not going to harp on that. My claim at the open was that this was perfect for synthesizers, and the sounds would be enough to convince me and maybe some other people, but let's step a little bit further. Okay, this is a configuration we won't be on for too long. This is my sequential circuit 6-track. Mono, very dry. Here's that ghost reverb again. Great sounds. Love it. And you'll probably notice this is a Chase Bliss Audio expression roller. I don't know that they're available right now, but I bought one on a pre-order because I like the idea of having to, because it seems perfect for somebody who's dealing with stuff right in front of their face all the time, and I can't get it to hold still now after I spent so much time getting it to hold still. Anyway, to set up in expression pedal is super simple, but there's a control port on the back, and it needs to be a TRS cable. And I'm going to set the mix down to 0, and I want to bring it back in with the expression pedal. So you hold the save control here and move that all the way up. And I'm going to pull this back down to 0. Okay. And as I roll up, our mix goes to full wet. And you can do that for multiple parameters. So what if I want our decay to get really long as well? And maybe our mix to get a little less loud. Okay, we're at 0. Decay is super long. Bring it back. And they don't have to be in the same direction. So there's our starting point for decay, which will be 0, or the heel position. I want to turn it down while I turn the mix up. So we are all the way down at 0. And our mix will start here and go up. So we're at 0. Mix is full dry, decay somewhere in the middle. Decay is pretty high up. So there you go. You can do as many parameters as you want. Some can go positive, some can go negative, and setting it up is quite easy. But I'm only showing you that quickly because I don't think it's that exciting. Expression pedals are cool, but it's not really the end of the world. I'm going to enter advanced configuration, and to do that you hold select and bypass and then press save. And then our menu scroller here is how we go through options. So I think the blue plate is what I want for changing the way that the control port works. And so we change our decay knob, and I want it to work with a little something called MIDI. So that's on the 5th knob, and then I press these two together. It will reboot, and while it reboots, I realize that clapping transition isn't quite as cool when it's a totally different layout. Anyway, let's talk about some more advanced compatibility. You just watched me change our advanced configuration so the control port could work with MIDI. So to get MIDI into that control port, which is a 1/4-inch jack, we need a few things. And first of all, 1/4-inch, like guitar pedal sized, MIDI is not a standard. And that's a huge shame. So the way Empress routes the 3 connections available on a TRS jack, which could be MIDI in, MIDI out, and our MIDI going in one direction only takes 2 connectors, and we have 3 available to us on a TRS jack, the T, the R, and the S. But MIDI needs 2 connectors, and the way that's wired is different for an Empress pedal versus a Chase Bliss versus a Maris. I'm not sure which is which, but I do know they're all different. And I was just going to solder up a jack to the end of like a stereo jack, a MIDI cable just to the end of a stereo jack to work with this, but I was looking at the pinout and I realized it's the same as one of these mini jack TRS MIDIs, and this is a Type A adapter from Electron, I believe. Unless they sell Type Bs that look identical, this is a Type A. So all I'm doing, this is a MIDI cable into an 1/8-inch mini jack adapter, and then moving that up to a 1/4-inch cable. And so now I just need to plug this into the control port and the other end into one of the MIDI outputs. And I'm not looking. I think that would be B, but we'll find out in a second. But now we have MIDI to a mini jack adapter to a 1/4-inch adapter. Very convenient that it works like that. I don't know that that was intentional or not. But I'm going to go to my Q-Link edits, and we're going to set up for the program, which is a MIDI program. And we're sending out of, I believe, jack B, and I believe this is responding on MIDI channel 2, but I'll check that in a second. But I go to my Q-Links, and I need to set this to a particular CC. So what's something I've used as an example already? How about our mix? So I'll turn that way down. And I'll open up our MIDI CC map, which is in here somewhere, I promise. And our mix is CC22. So I'm going to change this to 22. Our mix is at 0, because that's where I set it here on the pedal. If I turn up that MIDI CC22, wonderful. And this is a little different from an expression pedal because I could send a bunch of messages at once. They are routed to specific things, and they can do more than just the expression pedal. The expression pedal can do what any of these knobs could control, right? But also over MIDI CCs, you can just bypass or deactivate the pedal. And let me check, where's that at? That is number 60. So let's put that on our second one. And we'll change this CC value all the way to 60. And we're down at 0. Pedal is bypassed. As I bring it up to 127, we're engaged. 0. bypassed, and engaged. That is super, super cool. And if you know MIDI CCs, if you're used to working with MIDI CCs, the big excitement of that is you can automate those parameters over time. And so I'm going to record just me changing a MIDI CC over time. I'm not sequencing anything. I'm just changing our MIDI CC over time. So that is done and recorded. I'm going to go into our grid mode. I'm going to pull up that MIDI CC. This is what I have recorded, and I can redraw over it if I want to make it smoother. Hear it fading in. I'm going to make a really abrupt jump up and a really abrupt jump down, so you can hear it for sure. Full wet for a second, full dry for a second, and then fading over. So you can do that with any of these parameters. You can do that with things that aren't on the panel. You can do it for things other than these knobs. I could change the bypass setting at some point in my track. And knowing that I have the power of that, and knowing now that over the course of a track, over the course of a jam, I can have recorded movements for all of these knobs, I think that's really, really powerful. Now, with this configuration, using an adapter like this and not one of those like breakout boxes, I can't get any MIDI out of the pedal, which is not a problem for this scenario, but if I wanted to change these knobs and have that write the CC from the get-go, like I could record the CC as it came out of one of these knobs, I can't do that when I just have it coming into the jack like this. Cool, and our MIDI can be more than that. We could send clock to it and sync our delays, for example, or we talked about our presets earlier. If I change the program change message, so 0 is our manual, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I could pick any of these presets as part of the sequence or the program that I'm loading here on my MPC, or if I was using a DAW. And same thing with the automation. If you're using a hardware sequencer that can send out MIDI CCs, or you're using a DAW, you can now have whatever preset as part of that program, or when you load up that project, it will send, okay, I was using preset 6 for that. I was using preset 2 for that. And then your sound, just like if you had your reverb in a VST, can be the same every time you load up your project. My brain realizing I hadn't played the reverb in a while. But all that to say, with a hardware sequencer that's good with MIDI CCs, or with a DAW, you can load your presets, you can change your parameters over time. That is tons and tons of power. So if I load a project where I had the reverb set a certain way, it'll be set the same way, assuming I was good about saving my preset where I wanted it. And I can have the MIDI CCs change the parameters over the course of the song. If I wanted something to swell in a certain way, or I wanted the reverb to be off for the intro, I could have all that handled in MIDI CC in the program changes. That is amazing. That is really, really powerful. So there, with just a little bit of preparation, you have like a VST, a very digital songwriting amount of power without taking up your CPU on a nice reverb algorithm, and frankly, this sounds better than any of the junk that I've used, but I don't use a DAW at all. Anyway, another feature, and just to mention it quickly, the looper. The looper needs a certain speed of SD card. I don't have any SD cards that are that fast, and I didn't realize that till now. The only cards I've bought in the last several years are for each of my cameras, and I bought the cheap ones. They're not fast enough. So I'm sorry I can't show you the looper, but there is a looper, and that continues this thread of this can do the job of several pedals. So I'm sorry I can't show it to you. But anyway, so I can't show you it, and I'm sorry I can't show you it, but it does have one. Anyway, what if you aren't the type to sequence MIDI? What if you're a little deeper? Surprise, Eurorack. You can also, I'm going to go back into advanced configuration. I'm going to go to plate, and I'm going to change it to number 2 here, and then close out, because that is the setting for 0 to 5 volts of a control voltage. And to connect it, I have this cable, which is just a straight mono TS, an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to put it to this 5-volt offset just on this fader here. Can you see that? Hope so. That is the Acid Rain Technologies Navigator. And this is exactly pretty much the patch I had when I finished my video about the buchla oscillators. If you're curious, that is available. So no difference right now, but you set it up the exact same way you set up the expression jack. Put the heel position or the minimum on the panel, then hold save and turn it up to where you want. All the way up. This might not be a full 5 volts coming out of here, so I'm going to change it to this knob. Sounds like it is. And of course, it doesn't have to be modulated with something static. It doesn't have to be with a fixed voltage. It can also be from an LFO. I have an LFO on the 540, but it's bipolar, and I don't know that this will do well with negative voltage, so I'm going to run it from my 2 HP LFO, which is all positive modulation. And of course, you can modulate multiple parameters at once, but I'm going to take off any modulation of my mix and my decay. I'll turn them both a little bit down. And I'm going to modulate our low and our high in opposite. So I'm going to start them both there and then flip them around the axis. We'll see how that sounds. Very cool. I like that a lot. But just to show you that this is now really, really flexible. Yes, you only have one port for in and out, but it can control multiple parameters at a time. And you can modulate that, and it doesn't have to be an LFO, it can be an envelope. You know what I want to change? How about let's move these both to the center and then hold save, move them back to the center. I want to move delay time. So it's here. Let's move it just barely. Let's move it higher and move it just barely. And we'll slow down that modulation. So I'm sort of simulating like the warble of a tape machine. Really love that. Cool, and I'm going to set us up on an arpeggio. Alrighty, I'm just going to talk over this arpeggio to carry me out like vintage Jorb. I know some of those were very quick, and I just wanted to introduce you to everything I could think of that might convince you that this is the perfect reverb pedal for synthesizers, because I really think it is. All those little bits of connectivity, just another opportunity for a cool setup or an interesting setup, or new and interesting sounds or ways of controlling them, all those things. And if I focused on all the modes the whole time, this video would have been even longer, or MIDI, or all the things you can do with CV. There were so many opportunities for this to be an entire video, and if there is particular interest, I might do a bunch of tricks with CV or MIDI. You let me know in the comments, or I might do a comparison of this, and I'll borrow a friend's Big Sky if I can get him to do that. I haven't asked yet. And just not really talk, just compare the modes, because I know that's some of the things you guys commented, and thanks for doing that. I really appreciate when you guys do that. It helps validate my outlines. But anyway, I want to recap with what I consider to be sort of an anecdote. Okay? The first thing I wanted to say, and the first thing I thought of, was just naming it the Reverb wasn't something that I really understood. The Empress, their top-of-the-line delay, is called the ecosystem. It's not just the delay, it's the ecosystem, and that implies some degree of specificity or a functional uniqueness, I guess, beyond just being a delay pedal. So why not do that here? Why not think of some big, amazing, flowery language that makes you think of, wow, that's an amazing name for a reverb, or that feels like it would be great reverb. But after some time with it and keeping track of my thoughts, I think that's exactly the point of naming it just the Reverb. The character of this pedal isn't defined by some particular feature, and it isn't leaning towards any singular inspiration, right? Not like the delays that are explicit about being a tape delay or a drum echo or whatever. There's no definite reverb that this is. It's not, I'm trying to be all the good plate reverbs, I'm not trying to be all the good spring reverbs, whatever. At its core, it's just a reverb pedal, and it does a lot of reverb sounds, but that is what makes it special. It's not leaning into some singular inspiration or particular gimmick to sell you or differentiate itself or get people excited about it. What makes it special is the quality of every mode, the depth of the configuration and sound with simple controls, which is important that it's easy to get to the really, really good sounds, and the power of expression that comes with being able to use it in tandem with Eurorack or with MIDI or even just an expression pedal. So sure, completely ignoring a lot of what I just said, in some ways the Reverb is just a reverb, but in terms of its sound quality and the complete features package, it's far and away the best, the most complete pedal format reverb I've ever used. I now consider it to be my standard for a very nice reverb. It is the reverb, and I realize that's the goal of this product from the get-go, and its design and its features. It does everything a reverb pedal could be asked to do, and it does it quite well. So there you go. My name's been Jorb. I love gear. I love the Reverb. Hope to see you in the next one. Can't wait to use this more. Cheers and so long.